Do you find your mind constantly dwelling upon the negative circumstances in your life? There may be so many positives, but the mind seems to have this proclivity for that one negative thing that is happening. And contemplation on it robs you of your happiness. This is called the negativity bias of the mind. Like, for example, if you have a soft fennel seed stuck somewhere in your teeth, the tongue will constantly keep on revisiting that spot. There are 28 crevices between your 32 teeth, but the tongue does not care for the other 27. It seems to keep on going to that one trouble spot. Likewise is the nature of our mind. Somebody may have praised you in 10 ways, but given one critical statement, you forget about the positives and keep on thinking, he said this to me, really? He actually said it? You yourself may have done 25 things properly, but made one mistake. And from within, this feeling keeps on rising. I made a mistake. Why did I make a mistake? I should not have made a mistake. Likewise, the circumstances in your life may be favorable in so many areas, but there's that one area that is troublesome. It could be relationships, profession, health, and that is all the mind seems to be fixated with. This is the negativity bias. And that is the reason why the media seems to be gurgling out so much of negative news. A group of scientists, Sorota and company, did this study in 17 different countries, and they discovered that when people hear positive news, it does not register too deeply. It sort of goes in from one ear and out of the other. But when they come across negative news, they become fixated. Oh, this happened. Oh my God. They remember it more, pay attention to it more deeply. Since the media is interested in its TRP ratings, they naturally pander to the likes and dislikes of the people. This negativity bias also explains why marital counselors say that in any marriage relationship, every negative interaction needs to be countered by at least 5 positive interactions. Because your spouse will forget the 5 positives and hold on to the one negative. You remember 3 years ago you said this to me? And this is also the reason why in organizations, if you need to give a critical appraisal to your subordinate, you must adopt the sandwich technique, which is give 2 praises, then slip in the criticism and again follow it up with 2 positive endorsements. It will then be accepted. The negativity bias in our mind gets compounded by a thing called the Tetris effect. And what is that? When we repeat a certain pattern of thoughts, the neurons in our brain tend to create pathways by which that thought pattern comes to us more easily in future. So if you repeat negative thinking again and again, where do you think your attitude will gravitate to in any situation? Well, the negative, of course. In the year 2002, Faiz Chopdart, a Britisher who was returning from Egypt on his honeymoon, was arrested before the plane took off because he was warned 3 times by the flight attendants to switch off his video game. He was engrossed in playing Tetris. On his refusal to do so, they arrested him, and when he reached England, a case began. The judge said, "You jeopardized the lives of everyone on the plane," and sentenced him to 4 months in prison. This was probably the first and maybe till now the only case of someone sentenced to jail for playing video games. But Faiz Chopdart was a victim of the addictiveness of the game. Harvard psychologists picked on this, and they conducted an experiment where they invited students and paid them to play Tetris for 8 hours a day for 3 days at a stretch. Now you may think that could be any student's dream to be paid for playing video games. But the students didn't realize the after effect of it. And what was that? Subsequent to the experiment, they found that their brain had gotten programmed. And one student confessed that as he was walking along the wall, his mind was constantly rotating the upper line of dark tiles to fit into the lower line of light tiles. Another student, he related his own experience that his mind was constantly thinking if these skyscrapers in the skyline could be put downwards, they would fit into the gap there. And the third student said as he was walking down the aisles in Walmart, mentally he was rotating the Cheerio packets to fit the shelf below. They had gotten caught in the Tetris effect. Let me read about it to you from The Art and Science of Happiness. What happens in the Tetris effect? The brain forms neural pathways that are primed to imagine patterns everywhere. It is a cognitive distortion. This is similar to what happens if you focus on a candle flame for 2 minutes and then close your eyes. You will continue to experience the flame in your mind for a while. The Tetris effect is not limited to gamers alone. It affects all and bleeds into every aspect of our lives. Our brains easily get stuck in patterns of good and bad. This is because our brain is highly adaptive. Whenever we repeat thoughts in our mind, these patterns become stronger. Soon, they become part of our mindset and personality. Consider the experience of happiness psychologist Shawn Achor. He was commissioned by KPMG, the world-famous accountancy and consultancy firm, to figure out why their employee accountants were so unhappy, even though they were drawing such high salaries and had such brilliant educational backgrounds. Shawn Achor discovered that these accountants were basically nice and industrious people. However, they were scanning balance sheets for defects for 8 to 14 hours a day. And the consequence was their minds were stuck in a negative pattern. They could not separate it from their personal lives. So they were prone to looking at defects of family members. One accountant confessed sheepishly that he had made an Excel sheet of his wife's defects and emailed it to her. and she was now soon to become his ex-wife. Another one realized that his son would come with his great card. It had so many A's, but he would be oblivious of them and just keep looking at the C. You have a C in your great card. This negativity bias had now gotten compounded. This also explains why in the United States, lawyers have a 360% risk for depression compared to the general populace. Now, apparently, this seems inexplicable because lawyers are so highly paid. Their average salary is far beyond the median salary of the population. They also have very strong educational qualifications. But the problem arose during their education itself, because they were trained in critical appraisal, keep on looking for defects. And the consequence, they became great lawyers, but that bled into their personal lives. And now they keep on looking for defects in their own life as well. This negativity bias in our mind is hardwired into our physiology. Consider the case of a fish that resides in a sea. In its environment are positive stimuli, food and nourishment for it to consume. There are also negative stimuli, the bigger fish for which the little one is fodder. If this little fish misses the positives, it is not life-threatening. There'll be other opportunities for nutrition. But if it misses out that danger, it could mean the end of its life. Hence, its physiology is primed to look for negatives and be fixated by them. This same physiology is passed on to us humans, where we naturally gravitate to what is wrong in our environment, which may be just 2% of the entire gamut of our life. And this negative pattern gets hooked in by the Tetris effect to create serious misery, unhappiness, and pessimism. But all is not lost. All we need to do in this situation is to change the way we look at things. Our Vedas inform us, Ishavasyamidam sarvam yat kincha jagatyan jagat. The whole world is the veritable form of God. Change the way you perceive things, and the world changes for you. As the saying goes, दृष्टि बदलने से सृष्टि बदलती है. William Shakespeare put it so nicely when he said, there is nothing good or bad in this world, but thinking makes it so. How then do we change our thinking to look for positives and become happier people? This will require positive reframing, which we shall soon discuss.